As the hate rises, I've made various attempts to defend The Walking Dead. Each time I discuss the show, I try using one aspect, like storytelling, to try and talk about the series as a whole. This approach isn't going very well. The Walking Dead is too big. Any wounds the show has caused are too old now. They'll never be fully healed. And too much has happened. Too many misdirects, too many missteps, too many stories about the evils of AMC. I think The Walking Dead's worst crime is that it has lost trust with its viewership. And I can't give that back to you, no matter what I say. But I see something beautiful about the show I'd like to share. Something I'd like to articulate one more time as I try to defend The Walking Dead. Oh, and a quick spoiler alert. The episode assumes you've seen to the end of Season 7 in the TV show, and includes a few details up to issue 108 of the comics.
In the pilot episode, Frank took a line of dialogue that was basically just, oh yeah, by the way, this happened in the past. And he made that the emotional core of the pilot. It's really the thing that I think sells the show. It involves the character Morgan.
When we first meet Morgan, he's surviving with his son. His wife has already turned and walks the neighborhood haunting them. Morgan knows he has to kill her and move on, but he claims,
and walked up to it here.
When Rick gives him the means to do so, Morgan can't do it.
Come on.
Morgan stares out at his wife on the precipice of letting go of the old world and accepting the new, trying to figure out how to go on. To me, this is what The Walking Dead is about. It's a question the characters keep asking themselves, which is, how do I live in the world now? This becomes questions like, how do I kill the mother of my child, then have the courage to take my son's hand and walk out the door into a life of unknown horrors? How do I raise him? How do I keep him safe? They say the true measure of someone isn't what they do when they're up, it's what they do when they're down. And here's a show where people have been pushed to an impossible depth of suffering. The world is literally ending all around them, and they have every reason to quit. But sometimes the characters find this primal humanity within. An immovable spirit that refuses to be suffocated, that will drag the body forward and grasp at hope. When we meet Morgan again in Season 3, he's fallen almost past the brink of sanity.
And I see red. I see red. Everything is red. Everything I see is red, and I do it.
But when we see him in Season 6, he has an appreciation for all life. They spend almost an entire episode dedicated to Morgan's rehabilitation, because Morgan's struggle for humanity is what's important about his character, which is why it's so heartbreaking to see him snap again in Season 7, still haunted by his demons. But that's the point, right? Our demons never go away. We are constantly trying to outrun them. The Walking Dead is my favorite show because it's the quintessential, fictional look at humanity, because of how low they are and how high they reach. This tendency for the show to explore human suffering has gotten the show labeled a soap opera. This is fair to a point. An essay by M.J. Porter in the Journal of Broadcasting and Electronic Media states, "If drama is the imitation of a human action that has a beginning, a middle, and an end, soap opera belongs to a separate genus that is entirely composed of an indefinitely expandable middle." If Walking Dead comic creator Robert Kirkman describes his work as a movie that never ends, then the biggest similarity the show and the comic may share with soap operas is that they were originally structured to have no definitive ending. However, soap operas are a surprisingly complex genre that can't be defined with a single quote. Not only are there differences between daytime and primetime serials, there are also differences between similar serials like telenovelas. Some, like Elizabeth Ann Warden in her essay, Life, Love, and Hegemony on Daytime TV, suggest there are even differences between long-running primetime soaps like Days of Our Lives, General Hospital, and Young and the Restless. Warden suggests that these series have unique themes, familial structures, and socioeconomic classes that fundamentally change the stories being told on each show. So to say The Walking Dead is like a soap opera is reductive. In their essay, Life on Daytime Television, Tuning in American Serial Drama, authors Mary B. Casada and Thomas Skill claim, soap operas present layers of complex stories that alternate between the edge of compelling drama and the quieter, more mundane moments of life, all of which entice the viewer to engage in an interactive relationship. Primetime, on the other hand, must depend on unrelenting action and conflict. I'd like to illustrate just how complex and layered a soap can be, and how that differs from The Walking Dead. On a daytime soap, General Hospital, there was a popular storyline in the 90s where a young girl, BJ, was involved in a bus crash, became brain dead, and her parents opted to donate her heart to her friend, Maxie, who was coincidentally waiting transplant. This would be dramatic enough, but the story was layered beyond that. When BJ's condition was discovered, her father caught her mother in the arms of another man. Then, after the transplant, Maxie's mom's partner broke off their engagement because he could see that Maxie's mom was still in love with Maxie's biological father. It's important to note that this storyline is spread across 10 episodes and that the bulk of it is just discussions. The only point of action is the bus crash. Moving back to The Walking Dead, you could mention the love triangle in seasons 1 and 2 between Shane, Lori, and Rick, but that plot doesn't have any subplots or other characters involved in their triangle. And across the 16 episodes that deal with their triangle, there's plenty of action. From narrow escapes, to characters captured, to walker attacks, and to conflicts with other survivors. I don't think The Walking Dead ever reaches the same levels of melodrama as a soap opera. It just has regular drama. For example, I think the fact that Rick and Shane love the same woman is just a more interesting foundation for their real conflict, which is the fact that they completely disagree on every direction for the group. Like when Shane sees Rick and Herschel herding walkers into the barn, it's not the love triangle that makes the scene crackle. It's the fact that we know Shane is wild and quick-tempered, and that he will violently disagree with this course of action. Attributing a soap opera label to their conflict belittles what makes their dynamic so great. Another problem people have with The Walking Dead is that the show spends too much time with more minor characters like Tara or Rosita. But I think the show is just earnestly trying to make us care about as many characters as possible. Take the largely unpopular episode in Season 7, Swear. To most, it was an unthinkable waste of time to dedicate a full episode to Tara and Heath. But the singular focus is a thematic reminder of hope. And not just a moment of it, a whole episode dedicated to Tara meeting new people who have already fought against Negan, failed, and now are so scared that they've given up on anything and anyone outside of their community. In a season where our heroes spend most of their time blubbering under Negan's heel, this episode's job is to remind us of hope. After all, Tara is the group optimist. She is defined by her childlike faith and trust in people. When her character is introduced, she is first meeting the governor. After a brief conversation, she postures, threatens him, and then forces him to fist bump her. In her world, this means, "Hey bro, touch your fist to mine, and all the god-awful things we've done to people and had people do to us will wash away, and we're cool." Remind you of anything?
Now you put down your weapons, walk through those gates. You're one of us.
It's a juvenile way of approaching the world, but that's what makes it pure. Tara is like a beacon of hope that heads out to this little oceanside community and finds Cindy, who, like Tara, wants the world to be better. And the showrunners don't cheapen the message of hope by cutting the episode in half or relegating it to a quarter of an episode. In a season with betrayals and a genuine threat from a rival community, this episode is a reminder that there are good people in the world, that strangers can work together, and that something as simple as a promise is something people can still try and respect.
Nobody's evil. They just decide to forget who they are. You have to swear.
Hey, I said try. Try and respect. This swear episode in Season 7 borders on the filler episodes that people complain about, but I like to think that there is a less malicious purpose to these kinds of episodes. Take, for example, the episode Hostilities and Calamities, where we largely spend the episode with Eugene in Negan's camp. Some might claim there is a lot of unnecessary stuff going on in this episode, but I disagree. In storytelling, it's common to juxtapose mood to accentuate moments or scenes. This is something you see a lot in Shakespeare. Like the scene in Romeo and Juliet where Romeo is excited to learn what news there is from Juliet, only to discover that she's dead. Juxtaposing Romeo's happiness against one of the saddest scenes in the play helps emphasize Romeo's sorrow. Similarly, in Season 7 we've seen our heroes beaten down over and over and over again. So parts of the episode, Hostilities and Calamities, offers us some levity to all that.
Dude, yes, you can have anything. What do you want?
Can I have lobster?
No, you can't have lobster. What the hell do you think this is?
We're on an easy street, and
More importantly, it follows the levity with Eugene with a scene that helps us empathize with Dwight. This isn't an easy thing to do because Dwight has killed our heroes and tortured Daryl.
Dee, we always said that if we got separated, I should come back here and wait for you. You'd show up with beer and pretzels. You remember that? I remember you said there was so much you wanted to hold on to. And then it'd be gone. But you're lucky you don't remember things, Dee. I let Daryl go because he reminded you of who you used to be. And I wanted to let you forget. I loved who you were. I'm sorry I made you into who you are.
But the letter Sherry leaves behind humanizes Dwight beautifully, as does his action of leaving beer and pretzels, just like he promised he would, even though it's obvious Sherry isn't coming back. Empathizing with Dwight is important because he joins our hero's side. I think it's worth noting in the comics, we don't see this kind of characterization for Dwight before he joins Rick's side. So while this moment in the comics is much more brief, it is far less effective. The episode also allows us to look at Eugene's character more closely. Eugene has been a coward from the start. He lied to Abraham about being able to save the world, just so he could have people protect him. And now he's in Negan's camp, pledging his allegiance because he thinks Negan's team is the safest. What we're seeing here is a journey of growth for Eugene's character. The show has taken his cowardice and pitted it against his friends. So now Eugene has to ask, how do I live in the world now that I've chosen a side that is hurting and killing my friends? It's a question that keeps us interested in Eugene and the show because we're right there alongside him as he's trying to figure out right and wrong. And because we care about him, we're hopeful alongside his allies that Eugene will grow, even if the comics already answer that question.
And I think it's really cool that, television is, a collaborative medium that, has hundreds of different people, like throwing different ideas in and changing things. And I think it would be very arrogant of me to be like, no, listen, me and Charlie Adler, the artist on the books, like we did this thing 8 years ago and it's perfect. Right. We work on these books very fast. There are things that we could have missed, you never know.
There are a lot of complaints about how the comics are a great template that the show ignores. I'm not going to go on about the differences between the mediums. If that's something you're interested in, I recommend taking a look at Kaptainkristian's Watchmen episode. I'll put a link to it in the description below. Suffice to say, comics and TV are different things. Period. One of the important things to note about the differences between the two is what each chooses to focus on. There's a thematic difference between the comics and the show up until about Alexandria. Before Alexandria, the comics aren't very hopeful. They're largely about seeing how much can be taken away from this group of characters. Heck, Rick doesn't even have both of his hands. Characters get reprieves, sure, but they are short-lived and more like breaks from suffering. There are moments of happiness, but not many of hope. You can see this by comparing the two iconic speeches Rick gives in the prison. And yes, I know the companion speech to the comic version is in Season 5 of the show, but I feel these two sum up where the characters are at that moment in time and the overall theme of their respective mediums as well. In the comics, Rick is saying that the old world and their former selves are gone, and this is as good as it's gonna get. It's a hopeless and bleak outlook. In the show, Rick is saying there is a future for them.
We let go of all of it. And nobody dies. Everyone who's alive right now. Everyone who's made it this far. We've all done the worst kinds of things just to stay alive. But we can still come back. We're not too far gone. We get to come back. I know. We all can change.
Now this outlook changes in the comics in Alexandria. That's over 100 issues in. I'm assuming the showrunners felt that an audience wouldn't want to watch a group of people losing for 4 seasons with no hope in sight. That's why it's designed the way it is, to make us care about whether or not these characters make it, and to believe that they can. Yes, they struggle, but they also rise up. And part of the way the Walking Dead TV show makes us care is by spending time with its scenes and its characters. The show is invested in the humanity of its characters. The comics are too, but the focus is different. Sometimes the execution is a little weaker in the comics, like the scene where Maggie and Glenn decide to have sex. In the comics, it's logical and practical, crass even. Now let's look at the Walking Dead sequence. Notice Glenn's bumbling.
Something wrong with me?
No.
No, I would never have sex. I'm lost.
And Maggie's tenderness.
You're not the only one that's lonely.
It adds an innocence to the whole sequence that makes it sweet. Even though their decision to have sex is just as sudden, the show's version opens us up to the characters more. Then later in the comics we get this. Maggie's suicide attempt is indicative of the comic style. When Maggie survives, she tells Glenn that she learned that you must make life, even their crappy life, worth living. But this isn't quite as triumphant as... an entire subplot dedicated to the idea that even when people are separated, there is hope that their love will endure. It's a storytelling device that, beyond words, allows us to spend time with the characters as they strive towards what's important to them. As they ask themselves, how do we live in the world now that our loved one may be lost for good? And they answer, by looking for them and never giving up hope. This question is the cornerstone of all triumph on the show. Unlike the comics that often simply pass by these moments of humanity on the way to the next threat, the show is rooted in searching for hope. Asking, how do we live in the world now? Because the answer is just as important as the tragedy that brought the question in the first place. Like the moment in Season 2 when the group is searching for Sophia, and Daryl gives Carol this speech about the Cherokee Rose.
So the elders, they said a prayer, asked for a sign to uplift the mother's spirits, give them strength, hope. The next day, this rose started to grow right where the mother's tears fell. I'm not full enough to think there's any flowers blooming for my brother. But I believe this one bloom for your little girl.
Or the subplot after the prison, where Daryl and Beth were alone, and gradually, Beth helped infuse Daryl with hope.
You ain't never gonna see Maggie again.
Daryl, just stop!
Governor rolled right up to our gates. Maybe if I wouldn't have stopped looking. Maybe because I gave up, that's on me.
Daryl.
Your dad? Maybe I could have done something.
Or that scene when Alexandria has been completely overrun by walkers where Father Gabriel says,
"We've been praying together, praying that God will save our town. Our prayers have been answered. God will save Alexandria. Because God has given us the courage to save it ourselves."
And Maggie's speech at the end of Season 7 about how Glenn's decision to save Rick in Season 1 started the idea of community.
To love. To live. To fight for each other. Glenn made the decision, Rick. I was just following his lead.
The Walking Dead has already told you what it is about. I was just following its lead. That's all for this video. Let us know what you think. Do these moments or points add to the series? Or is it too little too late? We appreciate all viewpoints. And thanks for watching, guys. If this is your first time on the channel and you enjoyed what you saw, please subscribe. There's a new video every month. And if you really liked it, hit that like button, because likes help me get out of bed in the morning. Not much else does. Next month we talk about spectacular 90s action movies. See you guys in the next one.